I hope you are wondering why in the world I began with a sound like that, the infamous sound of Indian traffic. Not to say that it's the only place in the world to have such a hectic sound, but it definitely is the first place I've heard something truly as, what should I call it, special. When I came to India, my family did tell me a lot of things, like how I would see cows casually crossing roads. However, they conveniently forgot to mention that getting a wink of sleep after a 12-hour flight would be impossible. But the thing is, no matter what, the horns serve their purpose effectively. They communicate the fact that someone is in your way, and ideally, they should get out. And as absurd as this may sound, I would like to call this cacophony music. Simply because even though it does sound bad, it is a way of expressing emotions, and one of the languages of emotions is music. Like chemistry has formulae and equations, and math has numbers and symbols. So if I were to ask you if you have ever wondered what it would be like to communicate using sounds, your answer shouldn't just be a yes. It should be that I already do use them every single day. Now picture this, taking a break from the city, going to a peaceful countryside, different country. Sounds amazing, right? But then you realize you have to dig into the depths of your brain to find the few elementary words that you understand in the language spoken over there. Yes, you could always take out your phone and translate, but do you really want to spend a holiday doing that? This is where I'd like to show you Exhibit 8. That was La Campanella, an Italian piece, which translates to the little bell in English. Now, I don't know how many of you know Italian, but I definitely don't, and I'm still sure we all could understand that this piece was not trying to say something sad. You're right. This piece in particular focuses on emotions of wonder and astonishment. If we were to get into the technicalities, this is done through the jump in high notes and the quick bowing pattern. All of this combined makes this piece resemble the sound of a bell, where the name comes from. However, getting back to the main point, even without knowing a lot about Italy, you could still understand the message being passed to you. And with further listening, you'd probably end up feeling like you've heard a whole story with the climax and everything. I have another example, one of my personal favorites, Exhibit B. That was Habanera by Georges Bizet from the opera Carmen. The version you heard was the violin one, in short, the version without French lyrics. This piece is very passionate, dramatic, has ups and downs, and once again, if we were to get into technicalities, this is done through the switch in the major and minor scales. Initially, there's a minor scale, and as the piece progresses, there's a continuous switch between the two. Major scales associate with more brighter and happier sounds, whereas minor scales are the exact opposite. They resonate with serious and more deeper tones. But what I want you to gather from all of this is that if you could comprehend so much from a piece without words, then regardless of whether they were present or not, you would still be able to understand the message being passed to you. The linguistic barriers that we had when we came to the country, they're broken and filled with simple appreciation and understanding of the country you're in. That's the thing about music. I just showed you two examples in relation to countries, but this can also happen with emotions. We do our best to describe music under certain words. For example, I could say 5 pieces are happy and another 10 are serious. But the truth is, music has so many dimensions that words just don't do justice all the time. The only thing that can describe such pieces of music is what you feel when you hear them. This in no way, however, should mean that I'm advocating for 0 words. I mean, there are so many songs filled with wonderful, diverse, and meaningful lyrics that we all love. In fact, there's music in the way we speak, and I'm pretty sure we use words to talk, right? I mean, we don't talk like this, in a boring, unexpressive, flat tone. We have those highs and lows to say we're happy, to say we're gloomy. And this change in pitch, which is music, is also how we associate some emotions with sounds. Even if I didn't know what someone was going on about in Hindi, I would still be able to understand whether or not I'm supposed to be happy. Like, do you know when you're talking to somebody, and even after asking them to repeat, like 3 to 4 times, you didn't quite catch what they said? So you end up smiling and nodding because you did hear a slight rise in their pitch towards the end, so you know you're supposed to be happy for them, even if you don't know why. The wonderful thing about this example is that we've all done it, regardless of nationality or age. I mean, you cannot look at me and say you haven't done it. I can see those guilty faces. This is where I'd like to say music is associative. It's up to you and only you what you want to associate it with. Maybe a particular experience, emotion, person, place. You don't have to be some classical expert to do that. You just have to feel. Now, another example I have, which really contradicts the serious tone I've got going on over here, is Exhibit C. Seeing a couple of smiles, I presume some of you know what this sound is. But for those of you who don't, first of all, thank you so much for not being victims of social media's irresistible pull. But here's some context for you. This sound is typically background music for memes that make disastrous situations into more relatable ones for us. Most of the time, however, because the one I'm about to show you isn't directly disastrous. It's more, well, you'll see what I mean. Like I said, not directly disastrous, but the idea, definitely. I mean, realizing I have to go to school for 4 more days, I have mixed feelings about that. Anyways, I talked about music forming connections and making communication easier, but what about people who are deaf? But being deaf does not mean you cannot feel music. Specifically, you can feel its vibrations much better, actually. In fact, in an article from the University of Washington, it was mentioned that in a research study, deaf students showed activity in the auditory cortex, a part of our brain which is responsible for receiving and making sense of sounds, which in people with normal hearing is only active when there is auditory stimulation. This is because the auditory cortex in people who are deaf has rewired itself to receive signals from other senses like touch and sight. And as a result, many deaf concert goers hold rubber balloons in their hands so that they can feel the vibrations of music through that thin rubber. They focus more on the path of music and they feel it with their whole bodies. No matter your age, your ability, or your nationality, music remains universally understandable and provides a way to give messages when words aren't the best option. So the next time you hear a different sound, a piece of music from a different country maybe, it's a way of communicating and forming an understanding. After all, music is a universal language. Thank you.